My name is Naomi Sutton. I'm 28 years old. 6 months ago, I stood in a bridal suite at a vineyard outside of Richmond, Virginia, in a wedding dress I'd saved 2 years to buy. My hair was done, my bouquet was ready, and 112 guests were seated in white chairs on the other side of a set of oak doors, waiting for me to walk down the aisle. But there was no one to walk me. 30 minutes before the ceremony, my mother had called. Not to wish me well, not to say she was running late. She called to tell me that she and my father would not be coming. "We told you how we felt about this, Naomi," she said. "You chose him over us. Don't expect us to stand there and pretend we're happy." My maid of honor found me sitting on the floor of that bridal suite, mascara ruined, phone still in my hand. 112 people waiting, and I had no one to walk beside me. But what my parents didn't know was that the man standing at the end of that aisle, my groom, Marcus, had a father who had been quietly planning for this exact moment. And when David Aldridge stepped through those oak doors and offered me his arm, the story my parents had tried to ruin became the most important moment of my life. Not because of what my parents took away, but because of what his father gave. Before I tell you what happened in that ceremony, please like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it? I'd love to hear from you. Now let me take you back to where it all started. Growing up in Chesterfield County, just south of Richmond, I learned early that my parents' love had conditions. And the biggest condition was control. My family, Dad, Warren, a retired military officer who ran our household the way he'd run a platoon, strict schedules, strict obedience, no deviation from the plan. Mom, Linda, a woman who could have been warm if she hadn't spent her entire marriage agreeing with whatever my father said. My older brother Craig, 32, who followed the path Dad laid out without question. Military academy, engineering degree, married a girl from church at 24. And me, Naomi. The daughter who was supposed to do the same. The one who didn't. Craig was the model. I was the project that never turned out right. When I was 15, I told my parents I wanted to join the school theater program. I loved performing, loved the lights, the scripts, the feeling of becoming someone else for 2 hours. Dad looked at me across the dinner table and said, "Theater is for people who don't have real ambitions, Naomi. Craig's doing ROTC. You should be thinking about something serious." Mom nodded. "Your father's right, honey. Theater won't get you anywhere." I dropped the idea, joined the debate team instead because it was close enough to performing and serious enough for Dad. I told myself it was a compromise, not a surrender. At 18, I got accepted to 3 universities. One of them had an incredible communications program with a 12% acceptance rate. It was the school I wanted, the one I'd written 3 drafts of my application essay for, the one whose brochure I kept tucked in my nightstand. Dad had already decided I'd attend his alma mater, a state school with a strong engineering track. He hadn't asked me, he'd decided. When I told him I wanted to go somewhere else, he pulled my college fund. Just like that. $32,000, gone from the conversation overnight. You go where I tell you or you pay for it yourself. That money was for your education, the education I approve of. Mom stood beside him in the kitchen, arms folded, silent. She didn't argue with him. She never did. Craig called me that night and said, "Just do what Dad wants, Naomi. It's easier. Trust me, it's not worth the fight." So I went to Dad's school. Hated every minute of it. Switched my major to communications in my sophomore year without telling them, and when they found out at a family dinner 6 months later, Dad didn't speak to me for 3 months. Mom relayed messages like a diplomatic courier. "Your father wants you to know he's disappointed." As if I couldn't have guessed. I told myself that once I graduated and moved out, things would get better. That distance would soften them. That they'd see me as an adult and finally let go. I was wrong. At 24, I moved to Richmond for a marketing job. Good salary, my own apartment, financial independence for the first time. I thought my parents would be proud, or at least satisfied. Instead, Mom called every Sunday with suggestions, churches I should attend, neighborhoods I should move to, men from good families she thought I should date. Dad sent emails with career advice I didn't ask for, each one ending with some variation of, "Don't waste the foundation we built for you." The foundation they built. As if my life was their construction project and I was just the tenant. And then, I met Marcus. Marcus Aldridge was nothing my parents would have chosen for me, and everything I didn't know I needed. I met him at a friend's cookout the summer I turned 25. He was a high school history teacher and varsity basketball coach. He was kind, funny, thoughtful. He asked me what I loved about my job before he asked what I did. He remembered the name of my cat after I mentioned it once. He grew up in a working-class family on the north side of Richmond. His father, David, was a retired firefighter, and his mother had passed when Marcus was 19. We fell in love quickly, not recklessly, deeply. Within 6 months, I knew he was the person I wanted to build a life with. My parents met Marcus once. Dinner at their house, 8 months into our relationship. It lasted 90 minutes. Afterward, my mother called me. "He's a teacher, Naomi, a public school teacher. He coaches basketball. That's not a career, that's a hobby with a paycheck." My father was blunter. "I expected more from you. Craig married someone from a good background. This boy is from the north side. His father was a firefighter. There's no future in that." No future. A man who shaped young minds every single day, who mentored at-risk kids on weekends, who had a master's degree he'd earned while working full-time. And my father said there was no future in that. I stopped defending Marcus to them, not because I agreed, but because I realized I was never going to change their minds. They didn't dislike Marcus for who he was. They disliked him because he wasn't who they'd picked. When Marcus proposed on a Saturday morning in our apartment, no elaborate setup, just him and me and a ring he'd designed with a jeweler friend, I said yes without hesitation. I called my parents that afternoon to share the news. Mom said, "Well, I hope you know what you're doing." Dad said, "Don't expect us to pay for it." I didn't want their money. I wanted their presence. And over the next 14 months of planning, I learned I wouldn't get that either. Every decision became a battle. The venue, a vineyard, that's not appropriate for a proper wedding. The guest list, we're not sitting with those people from the north side. The bridal party, your cousin Renee should be a bridesmaid, not that girl from your office. The food, who serves barbecue at a wedding? It wasn't about taste or tradition, it was about control. Every choice I made that wasn't theirs felt like a personal betrayal to them. When I held firm on my choices, every single one of them, the calls got shorter. The silences got longer. Mom stopped asking about the dress. Dad stopped responding to my texts entirely. And 3 months before the wedding, after I told them Marcus and I were paying for everything ourselves and they had no veto power over any detail, my father issued his ultimatum. "If you marry that boy, Naomi, don't expect us to walk you down any aisle. We won't pretend to support something we don't believe in." My mother backed him up, as she always did. "We love you, but this is your decision, and decisions have consequences." Decisions have consequences. The motto of my entire childhood, deployed one final time as a weapon. I cried that night. Marcus held me on the couch for 2 hours while I went through every stage: disbelief, anger, grief, and finally, a hollow kind of acceptance. My parents would not be at my wedding. The two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had made their love entirely conditional, and I'd finally failed their test. Marcus didn't say much that night. He just held me and let me feel it. But I found out later that while I was falling asleep on his chest, he was texting his father. The message read, "Dad, they're not coming. She's going to need us." David Aldridge's reply came in under a minute. "I already have a plan. Don't worry about a thing." I didn't know about that exchange until after the wedding. What I did know was that over the following weeks, David started showing up more. Sunday dinners at his house became a standing invitation. He asked about the wedding plans, not with judgment but with genuine excitement. He helped Marcus build the wooden arch we'd use for the ceremony. He drove 45 minutes to pick up the table linens I'd ordered because the delivery date conflicted with my work schedule. He never once mentioned my parents, never asked why they weren't involved, never made a single comment about the situation being sad or unfair. He just filled the space they'd left, quietly and completely, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. One afternoon, he showed up at the vineyard unannounced with a toolbox and spent 4 hours repainting the ceremony arbor because he noticed the stain was uneven. The venue coordinator told me later, "That man worked in the sun for hours and wouldn't even take a water bottle until the job was done. You've got a good one in that family." I started to understand where Marcus got his kindness. It wasn't learned from a book or picked up by accident. It was inherited, passed down from a man who showed love through presence, not words. 3 weeks before the wedding, David took me aside after one of our Sunday dinners. Marcus was in the kitchen washing dishes. David sat across from me on the porch, hands folded, looking out at the yard. "Naomi, I want to tell you something. When Marcus's mother died, I thought I'd lost everything. She was the one who held this family together. But Marcus, he was 19 and he stepped up. He took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. He became the man his mother raised him to be." He looked at me. "You remind me of her. The way you love, the way you stand up for what matters even when it costs you. I've watched you plan this wedding without your parents, and I've watched you do it with grace. That takes a kind of strength most people never have to find." My eyes were burning. I couldn't speak. "I know I'm not your father," he said, "and I'm not trying to replace anyone. But if you'd let me, I would be honored to walk you down that aisle." I broke. Not in a dramatic way, just quiet tears, falling fast. I nodded and said, "I would love that, David." He squeezed my hand. "Then it's settled. And Naomi, you should know, you are not a compromise. You're not a consolation prize. You're the best thing that ever happened to my son, and he's the best thing that ever happened to me. That makes you family, real family, the kind that shows up." I replayed those words every day for the next 3 weeks. The morning of the wedding, I was calm. Nervous, but calm. My bridal party helped me get ready. The vineyard looked beautiful. White chairs, the wooden arch Marcus and David had built, wisteria draped along the fence line. 112 guests. Then, 30 minutes before the ceremony, my phone rang. "Mom. We told you how we felt about this, Naomi. You chose him over us. Don't expect us to stand there and pretend we're happy." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone. My maid of honor, Tasha, found me sitting on the floor, dress pooled around me, makeup running. "Naomi, look at me." Tasha knelt in front of me. "Those people made their choice. Now you make yours. 112 people are out there because they love you. Marcus is out there because he chose you. Get up. We're fixing your face and you're walking through those doors." She was right. She was absolutely right. Tasha repaired my makeup, straightened my veil, and then there was a knock on the bridal suite door. David Aldridge stood in the hallway in a charcoal suit, a white rose pinned to his lapel. His eyes were red, like he'd been composing himself. He held out his arm. "Ready, sweetheart?" I took his arm. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. The oak doors opened, the music started, and David Aldridge walked me down the aisle. 112 people stood. Many of them knew the situation, knew my parents had refused to come. When they saw David beside me, steady and proud, I heard the reaction ripple through the rows. A gasp from Marcus's aunt, my coworker pressing her hand to her mouth, my college roommate already crying. Marcus was waiting at the arch. When he saw us, his face crumbled, just for a second, before he caught himself and smiled the biggest smile I'd ever seen. When we reached the front, the officiant said, "Who gives this woman to be married today?" David's voice was clear and strong. It carried across the entire vineyard. "Her family does. The family that chose her." The crowd erupted. Not in applause, something quieter, something heavier. People were wiping their eyes. Marcus's cousin had his hand over his heart. Tasha was sobbing openly and didn't care who saw. Marcus took my hand. David kissed my forehead, then stepped back and sat down in the front row. Later, during the reception, David gave a toast. He stood with his glass of wine, and the room went still. "I spent 30 years as a firefighter," he said. "I ran into burning buildings for a living. But the bravest person I know is standing right there in that white dress." Naomi walked into this family with grace, even when her own family tried to make her feel like she wasn't enough. She planned this wedding without the people who should have been first in line to help, and she did it with more dignity and more love than most people show in a lifetime. He turned to me. "Naomi, you are not what they told you. You are not a disappointment. You are not a rebellion. You are a woman who knows her own heart, and my son is the luckiest man alive because that heart chose him." He raised his glass. "To Naomi and Marcus, and to the families we build, not the ones that are assigned to us, but the ones that show up." 112 glasses went up. The sound of that toast will stay with me for the rest of my life. That was 6 months ago. Marcus and I are settled now. Small house, north side of Richmond, 10 minutes from David. We have Sunday dinners every week without fail. David's teaching me his mother's recipes. He says if I'm family, I need to know how to make her cornbread, and he's not wrong. Last month, he framed a photo from the wedding, him and me, arm in arm, walking down the aisle, and hung it in his living room right next to his wedding photo with Marcus's mother. When I saw it, I had to leave the room for a minute so he wouldn't see me cry. Marcus got a promotion at work. Assistant principal now, still coaching. We're talking about starting a family next year. When I think about what kind of parent I want to be, I don't think about my mother and father. I think about David. I think about how he showed up without being asked, how he gave without keeping score, how he treated me like his own before anyone gave him permission to. My parents reached out once, 3 weeks after the wedding. An email from my mother. Not an apology, an explanation. She said they needed time to process, and that they still believe I made a rushed decision. She asked if I'd be willing to start fresh when things settle down. I wrote back one paragraph. I told her the wedding was beautiful. I told her David walked me down the aisle. I told her that her absence was felt, but it was not the defining moment of my day. I told her that I'd be open to rebuilding our relationship, but only if they can accept Marcus as my husband without conditions. I haven't heard back. My father hasn't contacted me at all. Craig sent a text the day after the wedding. "Heard it went well. Happy for you." It was the most he'd ever given me that wasn't filtered through Dad's expectations. I'll take it. Some nights I still feel the ache of it, the empty space where my parents should have been. I don't think that ever fully goes away. You can build a beautiful life and still grieve the one you were supposed to have. But I also feel something I never had growing up. I feel chosen. Not tolerated, not managed, not controlled. Chosen. By Marcus, by David, by the people who stood in that vineyard and watched me walk toward the rest of my life. David told me something last Sunday over cornbread and coffee. He said, "Family isn't blood, Naomi. Family is who stays. Family is who shows up when it's hard and doesn't ask for credit." He's right. He's been right about everything. If you're watching this, and the people who were supposed to love you have let you down, if they've made their love conditional on control, I want you to know something. You are allowed to grieve what they couldn't give you, and you are allowed to accept what someone else can. Those two things can exist at the same time. Letting someone new love you doesn't mean you failed. It means you survived. The family you build can be just as real, just as deep, and just as sacred as the one you were born into. Sometimes more. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story meant something to you, please like and subscribe. Have you ever had someone step in and become the family you needed? I'd love to hear about them. Drop your story in the comments below. Until next time, remember, You are not hard to love. You just haven't found the right people yet. And when you do, they won't ask you to earn it.